The air inside the rebel hideout was thick with unease, the low hum of failing machinery blending with the murmurs of restless voices. Kael stood near the entrance, his gaze sharp beneath furrowed brows, scanning the faces of those who had once been his closest allies. Each pair of eyes held shadows, whispers of doubt, fear, and suspicion that stretched like cracks through the fragile solidarity they had fought so hard to build. "We can't afford fractures now," Kael said quietly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "Not when the city's breaking apart all around us." But his words fell on ears clouded by uncertainty. The recent losses had left raw wounds, and the discovery of betrayal within their ranks only deepened the chasms. Whispers spread fast: who had sold them out, who had led Governor Ralvik's forces to their doorstep during the last supply run. Kael knew the answer, but hesitated to name the traitor, knowing the consequences that truth would unleash. The walls, patched with scavenged metal plates and flickering neon strips, seemed to close in as accusations grew louder. Lyra stood beside him, her fiery red hair a beacon of defiance amid the gloom. Her jaw was set, eyes blazing with the pain of loss and the stubborn hope that still burned inside her. "We need to act," she urged. "If we don't root out the rot, we'll all fall." Kael nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. The weight of leadership pressed down harder than ever. He had to be the one to face the betrayer, to draw a line between survival and destruction. Suddenly, the ground shuddered beneath them, a violent skyquake rocking the floating city as metal groaned and alarms blared. The fragile metropolis, already on the brink, convulsed violently, sending the rebels scrambling for cover. The air filled with the acrid scent of ozone and burning circuitry as sparks showered from exposed conduits. "Move," Kael shouted, grabbing a struggling recruit and pulling her to safety behind a reinforced bulkhead. The chaos outside mirrored the turmoil within. Every tremor was a reminder that their sanctuary was as unstable as their trust. As the quake subsided, the rebels gathered once more, shaken but unbroken. In the flickering light, Kael found Myra tending to the wounded, her hands sure despite the pandemonium. The medic's calm resolve was a rare balm amid the storm, her presence a fragile thread holding them together. Later, in the quiet that followed, Kael sought out the betrayer. The confrontation was tense, held beneath the cold glow of flickering neon lights that cast long shadows on the cracked concrete floor. The traitor's eyes darted nervously, guilt and fear warring within. "Why?" Kael's voice was low but edged with bitter disappointment. "Why risk everything we've fought for?" The answer came in a choked whisper, a mixture of desperation, coercion, and fractured loyalty. The revelation cut deep, shaking Kael's faith not only in others, but in his own judgment. This fracture within their ranks threatened to unravel more than just their plans. It threatened their very survival. Yet as painful as it was, Kael knew that from this crucible, a stronger resolve must emerge. He gathered the remaining rebels, their faces hardened by loss but united in purpose. "We move forward," he declared, voice steady despite the ache in his chest. "We fight for those who can't, for the earth beneath us, poisoned but still alive, for the future we must build together." The road ahead was uncertain, lined with shadows of betrayal and the ever-present threat of collapse. But in that moment, beneath the iron skies, Kael embraced the burden of leadership with a fierce determination. The collapse within their ranks was a wound, deep and raw, but it would not be the end. As the neon lights flickered and the city groaned once more, Kael's mind raced ahead to the battles coming, the sacrifices needed, and the fragile hope that still flickered amid the ruin. The line between heroism and sacrifice blurred, but he was ready to walk it, no matter the cost. The story of survival was far from over. The dense, toxic clouds churned overhead as Kael gripped the controls of the battered sky skiff, sweat prickling beneath the grime that coated his skin. The distant thunder of explosions rolled through the air, a grim soundtrack to the chaos unfolding in the skies above the floating cities. Beside him, Lyra's hands worked deftly over the navigation panel, her eyes sharp despite the exhaustion etched into the lines of her face. "They're coming fast," she muttered, voice taut with urgency. Jax's raiders spotted a supply convoy moving low. If they hit it, we lose our ammo for sure. Kael's jaw clenched. The supply lines were the lifeblood of the rebellion, fragile threads holding together their desperate fight against Governor Ralvik's tightening grip. But now, with Jax's ruthless pirates exploiting every crack in the city's defenses, survival felt more precarious than ever. "We can't let them take it," Kael said, voice low but fierce. "Set course. We intercept." The skiff surged forward, slicing through the acrid haze as the sound of engines grew louder, a chorus of menace in the sky. Ahead, the jagged silhouettes of raider ships appeared, black arrows streaking toward the convoy below. The convoy's slow-moving transports, laden with supplies and guarded by a handful of battered fighters, seemed helpless against the sudden onslaught. Lyra's fingers danced over the controls, weaving the skiff through the chaos. "They're fast, but we've got the element of surprise. Hold on." Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers around them, fire and metal raining down as the clash erupted. Kael felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the sharp focus that came when life balanced on a knife's edge. He fired the skiff's mounted pulse cannon, beams slicing through raider hulls, while Lyra maneuvered expertly to avoid the retaliatory blasts. Despite their efforts, the raiders' ferocity was overwhelming. One transport erupted in a ball of flame, debris spiraling into the clouds. Screams echoed faintly through the comms, a haunting reminder of the stakes. "We need to fall back," Lyra shouted, voice cracking with desperation. "We can't hold them all." Kael hesitated, eyes darting to the burning wreckage. Retreat felt like surrender, but the lives of his crew and the fragile hope of the rebellion depended on survival. With a sharp nod, he banked the skiff around a jagged metal spire, evading a volley of missiles. The retreat was chaotic, the sky thick with smoke and the cries of the wounded. Back at the rebel safe house, the atmosphere was heavy with exhaustion and tension. Myra moved quietly among the injured, her hands steady as she applied bandages and whispered words of comfort. The flickering lantern light cast long shadows on the walls, mirroring the uncertainty that gripped them all. Kael entered the room, his face drawn but resolute. Lyra followed, cheeks flushed from adrenaline. "We lost too many," Kael said, voice rough, "but we held the line." Myra looked up, eyes bright despite the fatigue. "Every life saved is a victory. We keep fighting." Outside, the war in the skies raged on, factions splintered, alliances fragile, the city's fate hanging in the balance. Kael knew the battles would only grow fiercer, the cost of survival steeper. Yet beneath the iron skies, amid the fractured ruins of this broken world, a stubborn flame of hope endured. The next assault came without warning. Jax's raiders struck a rebel outpost perched on the edge of a floating platform, their black ships slicing through the mist like predators. Kael and Lyra scrambled aboard their skiff, the roar of engines blending with the cries of alarms and the staccato burst of pulse weapons. "They're aiming for the civilian sectors," Lyra said grimly. "If they breach the defenses, it's massacre." Kael's heart pounded. Protecting innocents was no longer just a moral imperative, it was the fragile thread that held their cause together. The sky exploded in fire and steel. Kael dove into the heart of the battle, weaving through enemy fire, his every movement a desperate bid to outmaneuver death. Lyra's voice crackled through the comms, directing fighters, coordinating strikes. The dance of destruction was brutal and unrelenting. Amid the chaos, Kael spotted Jax's flagship, a towering, blackened hulk bristling with weapons. With grim determination, he steered the skiff in pursuit, weaving through debris and fire. The final confrontation came atop a precarious floating platform, where Kael faced Jax in a tense standoff. The sky darkened with smoke and ash, the air thick with the acrid scent of burning metal. "You think you can stop me?" Jax snarled, eyes gleaming with ruthless ambition. "I have to," Kael replied, voice steady despite the storm raging around them. "For everyone who can't fight back." Their clash echoed the war tearing the skies apart, brutal, personal, and charged with the desperate hope of survival. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the clouds with blood-red streaks, the outcome of their battle remained uncertain. But in the heart of the storm, Kael understood one truth. The hidden war raging above the poisoned earth was far from over, and the fragile hope of a new dawn depended on their courage to fight through the darkness. The skies trembled with the promise of more battles to come, and Kael braced himself for the relentless fight that lay ahead. The heavy steel door groaned as Kael pushed it open, a reluctant barrier yielding to the sharp edge of desperation and hope. Beyond lay the bunker, an underground tomb swallowed by darkness and dust, relics of a past long buried beneath layers of lies and poison. Kael's flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing rusted consoles and tangled cables that whispered of forgotten experiments. Beside him, Iran adjusted his glasses, his breath shallow, eyes wide with the weight of what they might uncover. "We need to be quick," Kael muttered, stepping carefully over broken debris. The silence was thick, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city above, the fragile iron giant that teetered on the brink of collapse. Each step deeper into the bunker was a descent into the heart of the government's darkest secrets. Iran's fingers danced over a cracked terminal, coaxing it to life. A flickering hologram burst forth, a timeline etched across the void, charts bleeding data on environmental toxins, accelerated decay, and failed recovery attempts. This wasn't just negligence," Iran whispered, voice trembling. "It was deliberate. They accelerated the poisoning to control the surface, to justify the floating cities." Kael's jaw tightened. Memories of his lost family, the sky raids, the crumbling city, all pieces of a puzzle that now revealed a sinister design. Ralvik's regime sacrificed the earth to keep their power. Their search intensified, rummaging through folders and data cores, pulling threads of a conspiracy that stretched back decades. Each revelation sparked a new flame of anger and sorrow. Yet, amid the despair, a sliver of hope flickered. The truth was a weapon. Suddenly, muffled voices echoed down the corridor. Kael froze, signaling Iran to hide the data. The footsteps approached, a reminder that enemies lurked not only in the skies but in the shadows beneath. They exchanged a grim glance. Time was running out. With hurried hands, Kael grabbed a damaged data core, its surface scratched and worn but vital. They sealed the door behind them, the bunker's secrets locked away once more. As they emerged into the dying light of the city, the sprawling ruins below and the iron skies above framed their solemn vow to unveil the truth and reclaim the earth, no matter the cost. Kael's mind raced. The path ahead was fraught with peril. Revealing this truth could ignite a war that might shatter what remained of humanity's fragile sanctuary. But silence was a death sentence for the lost world beneath their feet. "We have what we need," Iran said softly. "Now we fight not just for survival, but for justice." Kael nodded, the weight of leadership settling on his shoulders. The iron skies darkened, but beneath them, a spark of rebellion kindled, one that could either save their world or doom it forever. The chapter closes with Kael and Iran preparing to transmit their findings to the rebels, the first tremors of an uprising that will shake the foundations of the floating cities and the very future of Earth itself. The acrid scent of smoke hung thick in the air, mingling with the sharp tang of burnt metal and scorched earth. Kael crouched low behind a twisted girder, his breath ragged, eyes scanning the horizon where the broken silhouette of the floating city shivered under assault. Explosions rippled through the distance, each blast a cruel reminder of how precarious their existence truly was. Beside him, Lyra's nimble fingers tightened around the grip of her makeshift rifle, her fiery hair catching the faint glow of scattered fires. "They're pushing harder," she muttered, voice tight but steady. "We can't hold much longer like this." Kael nodded, every muscle taut with exhaustion and resolve. "We don't have a choice. We fight or we fall." It was more than a battle for territory. It was a war for their future, fragile and uncertain as the iron skies above. The rebels' makeshift stronghold was a maze of scavenged metal and patched tarps, a testament to human tenacity amid ruin. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with urgency. Myra moved swiftly between cots, her hands steady and practiced, as she treated wounds that ranged from ragged cuts to deep burns. Her face, marked by fatigue and fierce determination, rarely betrayed the exhaustion she must have felt. "Keep pressure here," she instructed softly. "He's losing too much blood. We don't have much time." A young fighter winced, clutching a shattered arm, eyes wide with pain and fear. Myra offered a brief, reassuring smile. "You're going to make it. We all are." Her words were fragile lifelines in a sea of despair. Elsewhere, the faint glow of a cracked hollow screen illuminated Iran's pale face. He leaned closer, fingers trembling slightly as he pieced together fragments of corrupted data salvaged from an abandoned government archive. "There," he whispered, pointing to a schematic that showed a collapsing energy grid beneath the city. "This is why the cities are failing. It's worse than we thought." Kael stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "And Ralvik knows this, doesn't he?" Iran nodded grimly. "He's been hiding it, hoping to maintain control even as everything crumbles. But the truth can't be buried forever." The weight of that knowledge settled heavily between them. Yet despite the bleakness, a spark of determination ignited. "Then we expose it," Kael said, voice low but fierce. "For the people who can't fight anymore, for those we've lost." Night deepened outside, casting long shadows over the battered city. Around a smoldering fire, Kael, Lyra, Iran, and a handful of rebels gathered. Their faces were marked by soot and scars, eyes reflecting the flickering flames and the fragile hope that still flickered inside their hearts. "We're broken," Lyra said quietly, "but not defeated." Kael met her gaze, a faint smile touching his lips despite the heaviness pressing down on them all. "This bond we have, it's our strength. We'll rebuild from the ashes." Myra, standing nearby, nodded in agreement, her voice steady despite the toll the fight had taken. "Every life saved, every secret uncovered brings us closer. We're not just surviving, we're fighting to reclaim what was lost." The fire crackled, the iron sky above dark and foreboding, but beneath it, the rebels found a moment of solidarity. Their bonds, forged in fire and blood, would carry them through the battles to come. The night was long and the road ahead uncertain, but together they dared to hope. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Kael's thoughts raced. The losses they had suffered were steep, but the cause was just. The fragile hope they nurtured was a beacon in the gathering darkness, a promise that the iron skies might yet shelter a reborn world. Yet, even as the new day broke, shadows loomed. The government's grip tightened, and ruthless enemies gathered strength. Kael knew the coming days would test everything they stood for, but for now, there was a moment to breathe and to prepare. The bonds forged in fire would be their shield, and their fight was only just beginning. The dawn broke reluctantly over the fractured expanse of the floating cities, its brittle light casting long shadows across the battered metal skeletons of sky platforms that still clung stubbornly to existence. From his vantage point atop the reclaimed platform, Kael surveyed the horizon, a jagged silhouette of iron and cloud, where the remnants of a world long lost drifted uncertainly against a toxic sky. The air was sharp with the tang of ozone and burnt circuitry, a reminder of the fierce battles waged just hours before. Around him, the tired but exhilarated voices of his comrades rose in a cautious celebration. The platform, once a symbol of Governor Ralvik's iron grip, now bore the marks of rebellion, torn flags replaced by hastily sewn banners, radios crackling with messages of hope and defiance. Kael's heart beat heavy, weighed equally by triumph and the fresh wounds scattered among his people. He knew the cost this victory demanded. The platform was more than a prize. It was a beacon, a tangible shift in power that could ignite a larger flame of resistance or invite a crushing retaliation. Lyra approached, her short-cropped red hair dusted with the grime of battle, hands stained with grease as she pored over the damaged communication arrays. "We're not out of the woods yet," she murmured, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. "But this gives us a voice again. We can reach more than just whispers now." Kael nodded, feeling the fragile weight of leadership settle more firmly on his shoulders. "We hold this, we push harder, but we protect the people. Every life counts." Inside the cramped control room, the soft hum of flickering hollow screens illuminated Iran's gaunt face. Thin fingers traced a map etched with routes between city sectors, his glasses catching the pale blue light. The scientist's voice was low but urgent as he spoke of the regime's inevitable response. Ralvik won't let this stand. He's already mobilizing elite guards. We must prepare for a storm that could break us if we're not ready. Kael's gaze hardened. Knowledge was their weapon, and Iran's revelations were both a shield and a burden. We'll face whatever comes, he said. Together. Below, in the makeshift infirmary, Myra moved with practiced grace. Her hands were steady as she dressed wounds, her voice a calm anchor amid the metallic clangs and distant echoes of ongoing skirmishes. The scent of antiseptic mingled with the harsh metallic tang of blood, a stark reminder of the rebellion's cost. She looked up briefly, catching Kael's eye through the narrow doorway. Their silent exchange carried more weight than words, a shared understanding of sacrifice and hope. Outside, the once distant roar of engines grew louder, shadows shifting as loyalist forces began their counterattack. The rebels braced themselves, the taste of victory tempered by the grim knowledge that the fight was far from over. Kael's mind flashed to the faces of those lost and those yet to come. Every choice now held the fragile balance between survival and extinction. Yet amid the tension, a fierce hope burned, a stubborn ember refusing to be snuffed out beneath iron skies. As the first volleys of the renewed assault shook the platform, Kael steadied himself. "Hold the line," he commanded, voice cutting through the chaos. "For the earth beneath us and the skies we fight to reclaim." The turning tide had begun, but the price of rebellion was steep, and the journey toward a new dawn was only just unfolding. The fractured city hung on a precarious edge, its massive iron girders groaning softly beneath the weight of 1,000 lives teetering between survival and oblivion. Kael stood alone on the jagged rim of a fractured sky platform, the wind tugging at his rough scavenger gear, carrying with it the acrid scent of burning metal and decay. Below, the sprawling metropolis of floating cities stretched out, a maze of twisted steel and shattered glass, struggling to cling to the last breath of a poisoned earth. Alarms wailed in the distance, their shrill cries swallowed by the gathering storm clouds that darkened the horizon. The sky, once a vast expanse of endless blue, now bore the scars of humanity's hubris. Cracks of lightning tracing the brittle edges of iron and smoke rising from distant fires. Kael's gaze drifted to the fractured skyline, his mind a tempest of doubt and determination. The secret they had uncovered, the buried truth beneath the toxic soil, was a weight heavier than any physical burden. It was the truth about the Earth's poisoning, the catastrophic experiment that had doomed the surface and forced humanity to flee skyward. Yet that truth was also a bomb, capable of detonating the fragile peace that held the floating cities together. He turned from the precipice and made his way to the rebel war room, a dim chamber carved from the skeleton of an old maintenance bay. Flickering holoscreens cast pale light on the faces gathered around a battered table. Lyra paced back and forth, her fiery red hair a stark contrast against the shadows, while Iran stood silently, fingers pressed to his lips, eyes tired yet sharp beneath thin-rimmed glasses. "We can't keep hiding," Lyra said, her voice low but fierce. "The people deserve to know. If we don't act now, the cities will collapse anyway, and then what?" She slammed a fist against the table, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the stillness. Iran shook his head slowly. "Revealing everything will cause panic. The government will use that chaos to tighten its grip. We risk losing everything we've fought for." Kael rubbed his forehead, the weight of their words pressing down on him like the thick, poisoned air from the surface. "If the truth comes out," he said quietly, "there's no telling what could happen. We could spark a revolution or a massacre. The line between hope and despair is razor-thin." Their argument was interrupted by a sharp buzz from a communication terminal. Kael activated it, revealing the austere office of Governor Ralvik. The man sat alone, his sharp features etched with cold calculation as he surveyed the city through surveillance feeds. The sterile glow of his command center cast long shadows, symbolizing the oppressive control he wielded. Ralvik's voice crackled over the line, calm but laced with menace. "You tread dangerous ground, Kael. Expose the truth, and you will watch the cities burn. I will not allow chaos to destroy all we have built. Kael stared at the screen, the governor's threat hanging in the air like the ominous clouds outside. The choice was his alone: to expose the hidden horrors beneath the poisoned earth, risking societal collapse and widespread death, or to maintain the fragile order, sacrificing truth for survival. As night fell, Kael found himself back atop a quiet rooftop. The city's iron skies stretched above him, streaked with distant, flickering stars. The cool night air was a balm to his racing thoughts. The silence around him was profound but not peaceful, an uneasy calm before the storm. He closed his eyes, memories of lost family, burned cities, and sky raids flickering through his mind like ghosts. The faces of those he had failed, and those who still counted on him, weighed heavily on his soul. He understood now that leadership was not about certainty, but the courage to choose when the path was shrouded in darkness. The city below breathed and trembled, caught in the balance between destruction and renewal. Kael's fingers clenched into fists as resolve hardened within him. Whatever his decision, it would echo through the iron skies and poisoned earth for generations to come. With dawn approaching, Kael opened his eyes and whispered to the silence, "We will face the truth, because survival without hope is no life at all." The first rays of light pierced the horizon, casting a fragile glow over the fractured city, the beginning of a new chapter in humanity's desperate struggle beneath the iron skies.